A deal on Dickens, who could resist? A stack of Austen, warmly kissed. Golden Age crime tales twist and turn, every page a treasure to learn. Books keep coming home with me, piles so tall they're all I see. Turn a page and sail the sea, reading always feels so free.
Hi, my name is Talia. Welcome to Talia Nerds Out. Just wanted to do a quick book review for... I wish I had looked up how to pronounce his name because I'm going to mangle it. Nigeo Mart. Nigeo. I'm going to say Nigeo Marsh. I should have looked up the pronunciation before this. And since I'm using my phone for the recording, can't look it up simultaneously. But this is Clutch of Constables. It is a 1969 book. It took me about a day to finish. I got this as a free book through Thrift Books. This author, Marsh, I'm going to just say Marsh because I can't pronounce her first name, was a Detection Club member. And as I recall, I think she was the one... Oh, no, I don't have that book up there anymore. I want to say that she was the one that I read was a bit of a recluse. Now, I could be wrong, but that's what I remember reading about her in Marsh and Edwards' books. Marsh Edwards' book, singular, on the Golden Age of Murder. But this is the first book that I believe I've read by her. If I read another one, it's been a long time ago. I know I read a short story in one of the short story collections, I think from Murder by the Book. But this will be, if it's not the first one I've read of hers, it'll be the first one I've read in a while. For one thing, I actually was really excited to have a book about this size and like that old... I consider like the old paperback size, although I'm sure they still do release paperbacks on this size. It just seems like now most paperbacks are larger, you know? I mean, this British Library Crime Classic has a decent height on Clutch of Constables. This is the kind of paperback that I associate with like high school and college years. This is the kind of paperback, of course, actually earlier than that as well, the kind of paperback, you just kind of sort of stick in your back pocket and, go off with. So I kind of find this size to be a bit nostalgic. The print is small. So that's probably because of the size of the book. However, I did actually get kind of excited when I saw the size. I do also enjoy the cover, which is a bit unique. Sometimes some of the older covers can be a bit like, what were they going for that? Why were they doing that? I believe I know why. It's connected to one of the characters. I thought it was a bee at first, but I guess that's supposed to be a butterfly. That's the one thing I think of it's supposed to be, because looks like the butterfly causing a drop of blood on a woman's hand. But anyway, initially thought it was a bee. I don't actually believe that's what it is. Now, this is about... Well, the detective you have in here is Scotland Yard's Inspector Alleyn, Alleyn, and apparently this is a repeating character. Most of, if not all of Marsh's books, I believe, include this detective, which is actually nice because I do like what I've read about him so far. When you meet the character, he is teaching a class of, I guess, police cadets. I believe he said police cadets. I don't think it's just I don't think these are guys who have already become cops. I believe these are actually, they're recruits. So, he's talking to class, giving a lecture. And the lecture he's giving is about this specific criminal. And he uses a case from the past to illustrate his point. And you go back and forth from him lecturing the class and the events of the main story, which is interesting because it's almost like you get a bit of a break to encourage you to stop and think about where you are right now. And it's not something I've actually seen too often. I don't think I've actually seen in any of the murder mysteries that I've read before this. It kind of gives me like the Princess Bride feeling, like the Princess Bride movie. I didn't particularly enjoy the Princess Bride book, but the Princess Bride movie feeling where you get to a point in the book and then you have the person, so you have another person who is also, either like in actually recounting or listening in the case of the movie Princess Bride, interjecting with something that makes you either think about the story a bit more, or in the case of the Princess Bride, it was probably more for humor. But this one, it's that kind of like, okay, now with the recruits, you are encouraged to stop and consider. You're encouraged to think about, okay, what would Alian's next step be, and why would he make that next step? You're following for most of the story a point of view character who is not actually Alian, and I'm not even sure if that's the way his name's supposed to be pronounced. Like I said, it's Alleyn. I'm going to say Alian, but I'm not sure if that's the pronunciation Marsh intended. But I'm going to try not to spoil the mystery, the result, but you are following, for the most part in the story, the point of view character is Inspector Alian's wife, who she goes by the name Troy. That's her nickname. I don't think they actually ever explain why her nickname is Troy, because I think her first name is actually Agatha. You don't ever hear her called by the first name, like her actual first name. So, I'm just trying to see if it actually, her first name is actually Agatha. Now, I can't remember if Troy has something to do with the middle name or her maiden name. I don't think it would have been her maiden name. But Troy is what she goes by, and Troy is the name that she's referred to by through the rest of the novel after you first meet her. So she is your point of view character, and you are experiencing the unfolding of the mystery through her eyes. And the way they kind of explain how you can also have Alian telling the story in the past to the cadets, and then, or him telling the story in the future to the cadets, and being in her point of view in the past, is she writes letters to her husband throughout the events. Now, of course, you could say, well, she also could have told him about the stuff after the fact, but you also have, during the course of the events that he is talking about, she's writing him letters about the things she's observing, the things that are bothering her, and she's posting these letters whenever they take a stop, because she's going on a spur of the moment small cruise. And it is the Zodiac cruise. And the basic plot in the back is described as the Zodiac cruise has its usual lot of passengers, all except one. Scotland Yard's Inspector Allian knew that one of them was the faceless Jampot, a ruthless killer who could take on any personality. Yet Allian had only 5 days to trap him, or the other passengers would pay with their lives. And one of those passengers was Allian's wife. I thought that the characters were interesting. I thought they were well drawn. In some respects, it wasn't a comfortable novel. Not because of anything regarding the mystery itself. I thought the mystery was well conceived and well, what's the word I'm looking for? Executed myself. But what made it uncomfortable to read at points is you have your normal stock of British characters, and you do also have a couple of Americans. The most uncomfortable thing is they introduce, as one of the passengers, a physician who happens to be black. He hails from Liverpool. And I think he said his mother, one of his parents was Ethiopian, I think. And well, that's not the part that's uncomfortable. The part that's uncomfortable is that there's some pretty blatant racism in this book, but not like in a way that is condoned by the author. So it's not like you will sometimes see in some of the older novels where you might see a slur that might be said in an offhand sort of way by even one of the heroes. You would see Italians referred to in a derogatory manner by characters in some of Christie's work, people who are Jewish as well. But it would generally be something that was in passing, or there might be at most maybe a caricature of a specific nationality or ethnicity, and you could argue that it's showing some of the insular nature of Britain at the time. Insular not so far as like they were truly insular as in like they weren't traveled. A lot of the people that you are seeing in those novels travel quite a bit, and of course you had the Empire at that point. But it's more of a sense of superiority, a very much of a British, an idea of superiority, of very much of pride. But that's not the issue here. Not that more typical version that you see in quite a few of those older novels that you kind of expect when you're reading something of the 40s, 50s, maybe even to a certain extent the 60s. But this is a kind of racism that is blatant, and it's actually the more unlikable characters. The ones who are actually likable don't express this racism. And you have the mixture of reactions of like the one character who she is so appalled by it that she doesn't quite have the social graces to understand how to handle it. So she goes almost overboard in trying to show that she doesn't agree with that point of view, and that she that she's herself is not racist. So she goes almost overboard in trying to be you know, someone who is nice to this doctor. And it actually makes him rather uncomfortable and everyone else around her. She doesn't realize that he probably would actually prefer if she didn't try so hard. Like, not that he would like her to treat him badly. He just would prefer she didn't, like, almost, that she didn't overemphasize how much she wanted to make him feel comfortable, because it really kind of makes him even, emphasizes how differently he's being treated or seen. And then you have the people like Troy, who doesn't particularly treat him any differently. Now, she feels out if she has any questions about anything, about his personal experiences, but she makes sure that these are questions that he doesn't mind answering. And he doesn't mind it when she asks him, because they get along rather well. And she's a painter, by the way, as well. So the reason I bring this up is because he is very striking in the way that he looks and then how he dresses. She also finds that she really would love to paint him, even though she doesn't bring it up for most of the book. But just because he's a very tall man, and he's also a very dramatic insofar as he tends to wear, like, he wears bright colors that really is offset by his coloring. And so and in fact, he stands out from everyone else. Her painterly eye can't help but be a bit, but see the ways that he could really work for a very striking painting. But she wouldn't, do that without his permission, because, she doesn't just, if she's in a group with a bunch of people, she's not just going to paint them without her permission. But yeah, so it's very much a part of the book, and it's not gratuitous. And what I mean by that is it has a bearing in when the mystery's building up, and after you have your first death, the characters who have already shown that they are racist immediately suspect him, and he can feel it, and as can everyone else, that this is a behavior that is being directed at him because of who he is, or rather because of his ethnicity. And I'm adjusting saying that because it's not because he is Dr. So-and-so. It's because he is of this ethnicity, of this color, that he is being treated in that way by certain other characters. But yeah, so that's probably the most uncomfortable part of the book. But like I said, I didn't feel that it was unnecessary, because it actually led to building up the story and building up the tension and the suspicion among these characters in the boat. And you see the uglier side of certain characters shown, because even more so than it was at the beginning, because at first it's maybe kind of simmering under the surface, but as the stress grows with this unsolved death, so does the tension among the passengers. And the ones who are already racist, they are showing that racism and fear more and more blatantly, because the stress is bringing out the worst part of their natures, as you normally see in these mysteries, where regardless as to what the bad trait a character might have, that bad trait tends to come out under the stress of the tension of having someone die and not knowing who's going to be next, if there's going to be someone next. Just that shadow of suspicion and fear. So, yeah, in spite of finding that part of the novel rather uncomfortable, I did enjoy this. Troy is a likable character. Sometimes I felt that she didn't show the best judgment in how she dealt with certain situations. There are definitely a couple of male characters who show an interest in her. I think she might be one of the few attractive women on this cruise. There is another one as well, but she actually works for, she's staff. She's not one of the passengers. But among the passengers, you get the impression that Troy might be the only attractive woman. But it's not that she encourages the attention that she gets. I just think she doesn't show the best judgment. They know that she's married. She's made that clear. I just think that as she registered that a certain character is maybe developing some interest, maybe she should have endeavored a bit more not to be completely alone with this character. Nothing happens, but she put herself in a very potentially compromising situation a couple of times, even though she had no intention of doing anything or being unfaithful to her husband. I don't think she completely realized how some of her actions, like I said, she didn't encourage anything, but where she might have been maybe more discouraging, not agreeing to join this character if he invited her to have like a drink or a meal with him, maybe that there should have always been another person, since she realized that, okay, maybe there might be he might not just be flirting. And to be fair to her, I do think at the beginning she thought he was just an incurable flirt with nothing underneath of it. But other than that, for her as a character, she, I don't mind that the characters don't always show the best judgment. I think that she came to regret some of those choices when she realized that it was a little bit more on his part than she realized. And then I do think that she started making a bit of more of an effort to put a distance there. I think that she could have picked up on that a little bit sooner, but people can be dense. So to be fair to her, that while she did put herself in a compromising situation there, she didn't completely realize maybe how far it could have gone if she let it. Like I said, she put the brakes on and started trying not to really be alone with him after she realized that he was angling even for an affair, which she definitely wasn't interested in, much to his disappointment. But, yeah. It was an interesting novel. I thought that the tension that Marsh built up, a good level of tension. I don't feel that she ever stooped to trickery, as in hiding things completely from you. You do have most of the information as you go along, as per, most of the Detection Club type novels. They usually did try to at least give you enough to work with, so when you reread, you might pick up, oh yeah, she laid those breadcrumbs. I see what she was doing there. It doesn't just come out of left field. And this end does not come out of left field, even though I wasn't quite sure who she was going to choose as the murderer at the end. It was between two people, I felt, by the end. I knew who I didn't want it to be, but I wasn't sure till the very last moment, actually, which one she was going to choose as the murderer and which one was actually going to be completely innocent. And I give her credit for that. It was quite an interesting novel, quite an enjoyable novel, in spite of the discomfort created by the racial tension. And yeah, so Clutch of Constables. I thought it's funny that they went with the byline. They have all over this book, she writes better than Christie, and it's time to compare Christie to Marsh instead of the other way around. And I'm like, okay, let's not get crazy here. Like, this was a good book, but she's no Agatha Christie. But yes, I think I have one of the better covers for this book. There are some fun covers that will be popping up in my book journal once I get around to working on this one. But I ended up giving it 4 stars. And that was, like I said, in spite of, I debated because I was like, man, do I think this is 4 stars? Mostly because I was made so uncomfortable by the one racial element, the racism element in this story. But like I said, as I thought about it, I thought it was because of the way it was used to further the plot, not, like I said, not just in a way that felt cheap. It felt like you saw the effect on all the different characters in all different ways that you could possibly see it. You saw people who were racist. You saw people who were being directly affected by the racism, i.e. the doctor. You saw people who dealt with it. You dealt with who dealt with his ethnicity, just sort of like, okay, well, you're a person and that happens to be, your ethnicity. Great, let's roll with that. And then you have the people who tried too hard. So you had the whole gamut of reactions to something that was probably still a hot topic in 1969 in Britain. And I do credit her for not shying away from what probably was then also an uncomfortable thing to have in your book so prevalently. So I thought she was rather bold in the way she handled this particular story, in choosing that to be such a central theme in this book, among, such a central element among those involved in this story itself. I don't think Allian himself ever brings it up because it isn't pertinent to when he's talking, but it is pertinent once they're on the boat because it does create it's another element in the tension. But I think I've been rambling for perhaps a bit too long. I enjoyed this book. I think that if you are able to handle that element of racism being such a strong part of the story, I think that this might be a book that you enjoy if you like a good mystery. But if you might find that element to be something that you would not be able to handle in your reading, then maybe pass this one up simply because you can't just blink and miss it. It's truly there. It is front and center in this story. But yeah, that is Clutch of Constables. Quite clever, quite enjoyable, in spite of being at times a bit uncomfortable. But maybe a murder mystery should sometimes be a bit uncomfortable. Anyway, thank you very much for joining me. I hope that you enjoyed this book review. I hope that maybe you'll be inspired to check out Clutch of Constables, or maybe some of Marcia's other work. I know I'm going to check out some of her other work now that I know that I enjoyed this one. Probably my next one to check out will be another Inspector Alien one. So anyway, have a very wonderful day, and I will see you the next time. God bless. Bye-bye.
Books keep coming home with me, piles so tall they're all I see. Turn a page and sail the sea. Reading always feels so free.